course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who, think you look back on it now and he's so tied to the Terminator, and he's one of those guys that has never shied away from his past. He loves that people quote his movies to him. He loves every accomplishment. He loves to make the fans happy. So it's easy to forget that, 1983, when they're making this movie, he's the most famous bodybuilder of all time, and he's Conan. He read for Kyle Reese. He was brought in for Kyle Reese, and James Cameron was like, I'm not going to hire a bodybuilder to play Kyle Reese. This is not a good idea. And apparently in the interview, Arnold couldn't stop talking about the Terminator. He didn't want to play the part because he didn't want to be a villain, because he didn't want to be typecast as the bodybuilder thug. So he's like, didn't want to do it, but he had all these ideas about it, and was through the conversation was convinced that it defined his career, gave us the biggest action star of the 80s right there with Stallone. It was like an accident that it happened. That James Cameron wanted someone like a Lance Henriksen to play the Terminator, someone that was like the opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the guy that disappears into the crowd. And this one of the most iconic movie villains and most iconic movie heroes and most iconic performances in the last 40 years. It's like just kind of happened. The simple line, I'll be back, on page is not interesting, iconic, or anything. And in that movie, from that specific guy with that specific over-the-top accent that doesn't make any sense in the movie. Why on earth does the robot have an accent? But it's perfect.
It's a very simple moment. He's like, hey, I've come here to find Sarah Connor. I heard she was here at the police station. And it was like, yeah, come back later. He's like, I'll be back. It's such a simple line where it's like you're trying to be polite, to them, and it's like, all right, I'll see you later. And yet it's one of the most iconic moments in film history, especially when he crashes the car through right after that. And I think it's so great because Arnold Schwarzenegger, every now and then, I remember there were a couple of reviews that I remember reading about the movies after I watched them. And, there was this thing about whether or not he's a good actor because it's played very stoic, but that's kind of the character, and he plays it so well. He's very convincing.
Not every great actor is a great actor.
Right.
Some people are great performers, and sometimes they are the perfect person for roles, or they know how to make the role great for them. See, you can walk through all these 80s Arnold action movies and go, these are incredibly cheesy or whatever, or there's as a thespian, you can rip apart his performance, but he's so engaging and charismatic and entertaining. He did his job. He did the perfect job for the movie. The thing that kind of came up in those conversations with James Cameron, he was like, well, a robot wouldn't need to look down the way that we would. He wouldn't have all of these kind of inefficient movements that we have. And he thought through, what would a robot do? So he can't do the incredibly nuanced emoting that these Oscar-winning actors can do. But boy, can he play a brutal robot that is very efficient, and he can do that wonderfully. And even that isn't leaning into his strengths, which he's like a fun, charismatic guy.